This video was originally meant to be a short, but the more I looked into this topic, the more I learned that almost all the forts in the Elder Scrolls games have a lot to offer. So I'm gonna pull a leftover Pat and cover some leftover lore. Okay, so why am I talking about forts in the first place? Well, when I made my first video on cut content in the Elder Scrolls games, I talked about how the city as such in Oblivion was cut during development. In the place of where the city was supposed to be, there is a fort called, drumroll please, Fort Such. Now, I don't remember where I heard this, but when a town or city doesn't make the cut in an Elder Scrolls game, it is given something called the fort treatment, which just means that the town or city gets turned into a ruined fort, occupied by bandits, creatures, enemies, whatever. If I were to apply that logic to every fort featured in the games, how many of the forts were actually formerly towns or cities? The answer to that is quite simple, as there is lore for certain forts that mention it being settlements rather than being military forts or garrisons. In Morrowind, there aren't many forts in the game, and the majority of them are just garrisons. The only exception being Pelagiad, which is a fort and a town at the same time, and is the only example of that combination. You can possibly throw in Ebonheart, but whatever. But when it comes to Oblivion, god damn, there's a lot of them. In total, there are 58 locations in the game that are recognized as forts. So I went through all the forts to determine which ones are most likely to have been settlements in the past. Now on screen is all the forts I believe to have been towns in the past. Keep in mind, this is all subjective and most of them do not even infer to have been one in the past, except for a few. Fort Bulwark was originally Salvido Estate, which appeared in the Blackwood expansion for ESO. Fort Kamala is directly north of Hackdirt, meaning it could have been part of the town in the past. Fort Double Cross is northeast of Blankenmarch, so just like Hackdirt, the town could have been bigger and fortified in the past. Fort Fleecia is northeast of Imperial Bridge Inn, so again, could have been bigger in the past. Fort Such, earlier mentioned, was supposed to be the 10th city in the game before it was cut. Fort Vlastaris was a full-fledged town in the past and was seen in its prime in ESO. Fort Woodenhand is next to Goddle's Front Priory, so it could have been part of the settlement. Fort Wario is Black Drake Villa in ESO. Sangrator was obviously a former town in lore, and Sundercliff Watch was a village and could be seen in its prime in ESO and does have an underground village called Varsa Balim. Whew, that was a lot for Oblivion. Now let's see what Skyrim has. For Skyrim, to find out which forts were towns, we can look back to the first Elder Scrolls game, Arena, and take a look at the map and compare it to the one in Skyrim. Unlike Oblivion, where every town and city, except for the Imperial City, made its first appearance and had no reference beforehand, it's not the case for Skyrim. It's very obvious which ones were a town. And on screen, here are all the forts that used to be settlements. Wow, that was easy. If you're confused about Broken Tower Redoubt and Treva's Watch being on this list, it's because Broken Tower Redoubt used to be Karth Watch and Treva's Watch used to be called Treva's Farm. Both can be seen in ESO. The rest of the forts on the list were all definitely towns in the past. And there you have it, a comprehensive list of locations that have been given the fort treatment. So that's all I have for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Living in my garage, out.
When I smoke that crack, I feel like $1 million. Feel like $1 million. When I smoke that crack, I feel like $1 million. Smoking on the crack, hit that crack.